Congressman André Carson, representing Indianapolis 7th Congressional District. I want to thank you for joining us and joining me as I host this session as chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus Braintrust. I'm very honored to be appointed to this position by our CBC chairwoman, Joyce Beatty. You know, it means more than I can say to pick up this mantle from our friend and mentor, the great Elijah Cummings, who served for many years as the chairman of the CBC Braintrust. It was certainly a privilege to work with him on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Congressman Cummings often pointed out that transportation is a civil right. As I begin my tenure as chairman of the CBC Braintrust, this focus will be foremost in my work. We are looking forward to partnering with everyone here, and we really want to get your insights and recommendations as we work together to shape policies that advance transportation as a civil right. We won't just be meeting once a year. We'll be staying in touch, working together throughout the year on infrastructure legislation and much more, because there's a lot that we need to do to get done for our communities, to fix inequities of the past, and to build strong, resilient communities where our families can thrive and not just get by. We have great opportunities to make generational changes at this moment in time with our President Biden, as well as the Amtrak president, our former mayor of an Indianapolis City, South Bend, Pete Buttigieg, who is serving as our distinguished Secretary of Transportation. We're working with a congressional majority to pass the biggest and boldest, greenest infrastructure bill possible. And with your help, we can make this happen. We've got to thank ComTo for sponsoring this Braintrust and continuing a very long and productive partnership. The Congressional Black Caucus and ComTo are both celebrating our 50th anniversaries this year, fighting for policies that help our people get a seat on the bus and a seat at the table in government and the private sector. You know, when we started, the phrases equity and inclusion were used to describe our efforts, but our work together certainly laid the foundation for the long overdue racial reckoning and examination underway right now. Today's topic, transportation technology and our diverse workforce. We'll be focusing on new technologies, including drones, unmanned vehicles, positive train control, electric vehicles, solar, wind technology. We'll also be meeting with some very critical minority professionals, experts working on these issues, as well as executives. So I'm very honored. You know, there are going to be some critical questions. There's so much ground to cover. But first, I'd like to ask Tanya Adams, ComTo's National Board Chair, to say a brief word on behalf of our wonderful sponsors.
Thank you, Congressman. Again, my name is Tanya Adams. I'm the Vice President of Inclusion and Diversity at WSP USA and the proud National Board Chair of the Conference of Minority Transportations, better known as ComTo. It is my pleasure to welcome you to CBC ComTo Transportation Braintrust. ComTo is the leading organization dedicated to providing opportunities for minority individuals, small business owned, and the billion-dollar transportation industry. With 35 chapters and 3,000 members in the US and in Canada, we represent the interests of millions, often underrepresented, minority professionals and business owners in transportation. For decades, ComTo and CBCF have partnered together to discuss issues surrounding transportation and communities of color. We're grateful for CBC's sponsor of 27 years, the late Elijah Cummings of Maryland, for unwavering support. And now we look to the future as we continue this tradition. And thanks to our new sponsor, the Honorable André D. Carson of the 7th District in Indiana. It's only fitting that in 2021, Both of our organizations are celebrating 50 years of service to our nation, and that we seek to come together to find solutions to make transportation more accessible and equitable for communities of color. At this time, it is my privilege and honor to present Congressman Carson for the welcoming remarks. Congressman.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you so much. Got to thank Dr. Boyd, got to thank Tanya, Brother Greg Johnson on the West Coast, my good friend Patrick Evans, Inez Evans, head of Indigo, Hoosiers in the house. Got to thank Teresa Strom, who's doing great work as a young executive, Brother Terry Travis, Jake, Andrea Martin, Amanda, Renee, and I have to bring up our moderator, the very brilliant Janet Walker Ford. She's Senior Vice President and the National Transit and Rail Leader at WSP USA. You know, she brings a wealth of transportation expertise to our panel today. So joining us from the great Jacksonville, Janet.
Thank you so very much for that very nice introduction, Congressman. It is indeed my honor to moderate today's program and to get into this discussion. But before we do that, I too want to congratulate COMTO and the Congressional Black Caucus on 50 years of service. Thank you for your ongoing support and the impactful work that both of your organizations do. As we all know, early in the pandemic, transportation agencies worked tirelessly to create safe environments for those who continue to rely on public transportation. We believe that that work was a key factor in helping the public region gain confidence in the safety and reliability of public transit. And while there's some early concerns that the pandemic would drive populations away from city centers and reduce public transportation demand, that has not really been the case. The transit community and its partners view transit and rail as vital to the creation of a future that will be more sustainable, more resilient, and more customer-centric and more equitable. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel. I'd like to provide just a few additional brief thoughts as well related to our larger discussion today, which will be around transportation technology and a diverse workforce. And wow, what a topic that is. We could discuss it all day, but we only have a short period of time together. So we'll get to it. So to tease this out for our panelists, I'd like to broadly define those topics in a bit more detail. First of all, as the Congressman said, equity is indeed the defining issue of the moment, equity and infrastructure. Mobility and mobility integration. This is, in my mind, looking at mobility as a service, as we say, or really the way that transportation responds to the smart city challenges, as we saw in Cleveland many years ago, and what the associated strategies are around accessibility to healthcare, education, and jobs, where holistically we need mobility solutions. And then lastly, and we'll hear from Congressman on this topic, where he's done a tremendous amount of work, and that gets into the bill that he introduced that provides funding for loans and grants for nonprofits and NGOs to provide healthy options in areas considered food deserts. So I hope that we have a great dialogue. I know that we will. From our panelists, we'll talk about innovative and emerging technologies, policy shifts, and creative strategies for attracting and retaining minority talent in the workforce. Now, let's meet our panelists. You've already heard from the extraordinary Congressman, but let's give him a more formal introduction. He is the United States Representative, Andrew Carson. He's a Democrat from Indiana. He is a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, sitting on both the aviation and the railroads, pipelines, and hazardous materials subcommittees. He is a rising member of House Leadership Service as House Whip for the House Democratic Caucus. Congressman Carson is committed to the goal of equal protection under the law and is a valiant supporter of gender fairness, religious freedoms, and LGBTQ equality. He is chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Transportation Braintrust, working to shine a light on pressing issues and bring needed change to our nation. Thank you for that, Congressman. Let's also say hello to Dr. Gwen Boyd. She is Compto's interim president and CEO. Dr. Boyd is an executive leader in higher education, focusing on STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math, and diversity, inclusion, and equity leadership. She has served in prestigious educational institutions, including as president of Alabama State University and the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory. You may not know this, but Dr. Boyd is an ordained minister with a doctorate in ministry from Howard University. Patrick Edmond is a director or the director of federal affairs at CSX. It's a major class 1 freight railroad, as we know, whose territories cover 23 states. Previously, Patrick spent 13 years as Amtrak's director of government affairs. He also credits 10 years of working on Capitol Hill for Representatives Peter Peterson, Carrie Meek, and the late Stephanie Tubbs Jones to his deep understanding of appropriations, security and oversight, and government reform to address policy concerns. Going back to Indianapolis, we have Inez Evans, who is the president and CEO of Indigo. She's also a good friend. She's in Indianapolis, and she is the first minority woman in that position. She oversees Indigo's first all-electric bus rapid transit line and is passionate about clean fleet goals. Inez previously worked as the Chief Operating Officer at Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, BTA, and she is an active committee member of the American Public Transportation Association. And this year, she was featured in the top 100 U.S. Business Leaders magazines. Wow, congratulations, Inez, congratulations. Next up, we have Greg Johnson. Greg is the program administrator for the Bi-State Oregon-Washington Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Greg jointly represents ODOT and Washington DOT to lead with the replacement of the aging interstate bridge. Much needed work. The new structure will be seismically resilient, a multimodal bridge that improves mobility. Greg is a proven transportation leader, having worked in the public and private sectors on projects in Maryland and early involvement with the Gordie Howe International Bridge between Michigan and Canada. Wow, that's just tremendous experience. Teresa Strom is the Chief Operating Officer of Strom Contracting Company, where she leads daily operations, including contract negotiations, external affairs, and market diversification, and much more. She is active in the Baltimore civic community, serving on the local and national boards and volunteering hundreds of hours of time to support the community. Tiara has a very interesting background as well, a diverse background, I should say, in addition to interesting. She has a sports background with the National Collegiate Athletic Association, the National Football League, the National Basketball League, and other sports program. Wow, she's very talented. And then last but not least, we have Terry Travis. And Terry, I gotta tell you, I just love your title. Chief Disruptor and Managing Partner and Co-Founder at EV Noor. Terry's consulting group works on electric, connected, shared, and autonomous vehicle technology. He is also the co-founder and director of EV Hybrid Noor, the nation's largest network of diverse EV, and that's electric vehicles, drivers, and enthusiasts with members from all over the world. I'm so looking forward to hearing from you, Terry, as we all are, and hearing more about the emerging technologies and how it impacts mobility as a service. So with those introductions, welcome to you all, and thank you for your time today and for providing your perspectives. As a reminder, please keep your answers brief, but we do want to hear from you and learn as much as we can today. So let's get started. Our first question will go to the Congressman. Congressman, transportation provides accessibility to healthcare, jobs, and educational opportunities, as well as mobility and access where food deserts exist. How do we make sure equity is at the forefront of transportation?
That's such an important question. You know, food deserts exist where transportation fails. If we could improve transportation access, more people could get to healthier food choices. I introduced a food deserts bill called the Food Deserts Act, and it provides grants to NGOs and nonprofits to provide healthy food options in disadvantaged areas, including those where transportation options are as scarce as healthy food options. And the bill hopes to, fill the gap for our communities to get healthier. In a lot of these communities where you don't have grocery stores, people rely on gas stations or truck stops, and the markup is very high, and the options are few, and oftentimes the fruit is rotting, and as a result, people choose junk food to supplement their nutrition needs. There are food deserts in every state. There are over 29 million people, or about 10% of the population, who don't have ready access to affordable and even healthy food. And a lot of these folks, as I said, don't have access to public transportation or even a car. So, these unhealthy options are leading to fast food picks, which result in obesity, diabetes, malnutrition, and other diet-related problems. Additionally, a lack of healthy food leads to trouble learning, behaving in school, or even difficulty performing at work. So while this legislation won't help people in poverty afford food, it will at least make sure that affordable, healthy options are available. And the bill seeks to create a revolving fund in each state that will provide low interest loans for the operation of grocery stores and food deserts. And these revolving funds will be 80% federally funded and 20% state funded. In return for low interest loans, these stores will be required to provide healthy options, including staples like bread and milk at below market rates, though there is no restriction on other processed foods or even alcohol. But we wanted to at least use a revolving fund that will ensure that loan money is returned and continually lent to similar projects across each state.
That's excellent. Congratulations on the meaningful work you're doing there, Congressman. We're going to get into a second part of this discussion as well, but I want to mention how spot on you are with this work, and it's related to really healthcare. And at the end of the day, when we talk about mobility and accessibility, it is related. For example, in my home state of Florida, the vaccines, when made available, were originally provided to Publix grocery stores. And just for the same reasons that you've indicated about healthy food choices, Publix are not located in all areas. So brown and Black and low income communities typically have challenges having access to food and food deserts anyway. And then if you think that is your primary distribution point, we've got another inequity that perhaps is unintended. So I would like to tease the panel to think about that as we get into the discussion. Thank you very much, Congressman. Greg, I'd like to go to you now. In response to the increasing awareness that we all are discussing and have on inequities that Black people face in society, what are some of the challenges or the initiatives that the Department of Transportations that you represent have launched regarding diversity and future work?
So that's an excellent question. We are centering both equity and climate in the program that I'm currently working on. And the DOTs recognize that, once again, you can't build your way out of congestion. So they are looking at using technology and leveraging technology to do smart things, to make sure that we are reaching communities who weren't consulted before when the original interstates were built. So I think you're seeing that trend across the nation with different DOTs, that we have to do better than we did before. And there is a commitment at the highest levels of the DOT world to do this.
Thank you very much for that response. And we definitely want to talk more about that because some folks ask, they wonder in history, why does that bridge separate a community? Black people in some areas in rural towns and white people on one side of the railroad track. And it speaks to, right, Greg, what you're talking about in the past. And so those inequities were created with just the way we built our freeway system and the way that we make decisions about where a bridge might go. And we're living with that today. Look forward to hearing more about what the DOTs are doing across the country and your perspectives to right the ship and to address some of those inequities. Thank you very much. Patrick, I'd love to go to you. Since we're talking about railroads and tracks, this is a great segue to hear from you. Can you tell us about the ways that CSX Railroad infuses the accountability for the utilization of women and minorities in the workforce at all levels? That's whether it's internally or the contractors you work with.
Well, a couple of things is thank you for the opportunity. One of the things we're doing at CSX now is that we have internal working groups aligned with what we will call affinity groups, where African-American women are coming together, talking about how to chart a career path for to move towards the C-suite. We do a lot of partnerships and awareness campaigns and opportunities in the community to kind of introduce the possibility of railroads. Folks joining the railroad. One of the unique things about CSX is that we're an Eastern Railroad, so we are in 23 states, about 2/3 of the American population. Also, Dr. Boyd, this is for you. Of the 100+ HBCUs, we have like 90+ in the CSX territory. So we're always looking to partner with and try to attract the next generation of talent to the railroad. As you know, CSX is one of the older railroads. We're 194 years old as of this year, but we're always looking for the opportunity to hire, to restock our talent pool, but then also introduce railroading to the next generation.
Yeah, thank you very much. And what an excellent opportunity, particularly those young folks in STEM careers. And we're going to hear from Dr. Boyd to certainly get into that. And shout out to CSX. They are based in my home city of Jacksonville. So great to have them there. Thank you. Let's move into a broader discussion around technology if we can. This question is really for everyone, but Terry, I'd like to start off with you. And again, let's try to be brief, which you guys all have, but really want to hear your perspectives around this topic. Inez, I'm going to go to you next. So if you'll start thinking about the fact that I'm coming right to you. Technology trends in transportation are being brought to the forefront in a way that we haven't seen before, right? And as a result of the priority on equity and infrastructure that we're seeing from the administration, that really shines a light on this need. And really, in some instances, it's allowing us to really move forward faster with automation and technology. So in that vein, autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles, and things like even bus tuning, bus rapid transit, autonomous bus rapid transit. We talked about sustainability and resiliency through the form of electrification of vehicles and facilities and the grid. And I know I'm hitting home with the DOTs as well, because they've got a role in that infrastructure piece as well. But this no emissions, low emissions process. And then drones, and looking at them in a way that we haven't looked at them before. I mean, early on, we're talking about delivering packages, but really they're being used for safety and inspections, not just across the board. And that's in railways, that's in public transportation, that's with bridge inspections and more. And we're looking at congestion management, what tools we have available and that are evolving to really help us understand what creates congestion on the roadway and what technology can do to start mitigating that congestion and really influence the way the traffic patterns follow, as well as artificial intelligence. Those are just some broad topics. I know that's a lot, but please give me your thoughts on any of those areas as it relates to transportation and technology trends.
That's right at the nexus of what we do as a company. And, personally, it's been my passion, for quite some time. The work that we do is really around electric connected, shared and autonomous vehicle technologies. As we've seen, and as you stated, we're at an inflection point where transportation and mobility is being disrupted at a rate that I don't think people really understand. We're seeing these announcements every week from legacy auto manufacturers, from the White House, from any number of government agencies around the acceleration of a cleaner and greener zero emission future. And so the work that we do really centers on how do we utilize best practices, and then personally, For us, it is having a very diverse team, which a third of our team are HBC graduates. How do we position our community so that we can benefit from this? And then, there's a triple bottom line opportunity here. We have the ability to address transportation burden. We have the ability to address public health issues through transportation emissions and its negative impacts in our communities. And then we have the ability to address and make sure that our communities are benefiting from a workforce, economic, and entrepreneurial vantage point. And so right now we're experiencing $333 billion of investment into transportation, just electrification alone. We haven't even begun to talk about connected, autonomous, any of that, just transportation electrification, 333 billion. And we are the only African-American company that is engaged in these conversations. And it's critical for us to begin to expand this so that we're not the only ones at the table. And, for us, there wasn't a seat at the table, so we built our own table.
Well, congratulations on that. That is tremendous. I'm going to go to next, but I want you to begin thinking about this whole topic of technology and equity and inequities. And already we're starting to hear about the fact that with autonomous vehicles, with electric vehicles, we'll come to autonomous vehicles, there could be an unintended consequence with have and have nots. Not everyone's going to go buy a Tesla. And so ensuring that there's policy that makes for affordability for everyone for those vehicles is some of the work that's happening. I'm sure you're involved with Terry from a policy perspective, and Congressman, it's something that you'll want to pay attention to as well, because we could create another problem. So we'll get back to that. Okay. Inez, congratulations as well. You are the first, as first CEO, woman, minority, but also the first to have an all-green fleet. And that's an advancement in technology. Congratulations. Tell us what your perspectives are around all of this.
It's humbling to be the first CEO, first of all, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of this panel. But Terry hit on a number of things. What we're focused on, of course, being the first and largest all bus rapid transit line in the country, it is the technology. And what we found as part of our struggle is that we don't have enough qualified technicians to be able to work on these buses. Right now, we have 50 buses in our fleet out of 212. And so what we've begun to do is a number of things. We've worked on a second chance program to be able to hire others within our community who may have had a struggle sometime point in their life. Everybody makes choices. And so we've created a second chance program where we look at giving others another opportunity, to form a career, not just a job. So that's one thing. And then we're working with some of our local partners like Ivy Tech to be able to create our own apprenticeship programs to be able to grow our own. That is integral to be able to take someone who maybe started as a janitor, who always wanted to do something different, to be able to cultivate them, give them the paid training so they can be able to move on and upward and to be able to support our organization. These buses, whether it's electric bus technology we're talking about, or even hydrogen fuel cell that we're also thinking about as well, so we don't keep all of our eggs in one basket. And as we're looking towards autonomous technology, if we move operators from being operators in the seat, what else are they going to do? We need to have a program that's going to retool, retrain those individuals to maybe sit behind a computer desk, and maybe they're looking from a security perspective or providing customer service from a different level. So we are looking at all of these things from a very high holistic and putting in processes and programs to be able to address the needs that are coming forth for us.
Oh, that's excellent. Congratulations. Before we go to Dr. Boyd, because this tees right up to how we get not just the existing workforce competitive and in the market, but that next generation, I think as early as 5 years old, needs to take a look-see at. But Greg, Patrick, staying with technology for a moment, I wanted to see if you had any thoughts around what you're seeing different at CSX and DOT. Are you using drones for inspection of bridges? Are you seeing that for inspections of your rail yards, that sort of thing, or any other technologies that's different as a result of where we're?
Absolutely, we are using drones. We've tripled our number of drones from 2 years ago until now. We started with 40, we're now up to 120. And one of the things that we're realizing about technology is that it's also a workforce stabilization tool, which means it allows the current generation of railroaders to have something to look forward to as a reference point of inspiration. But also along the way, the systems are now being fully federated, that what the drones are capturing, the yard masters and managers are actually looking at via their tablets and using that as a point of technology and a tool to determine defects and deficiencies in some of the cars as we kind of inspect them before they get underway, to minimize interruptions once the train is off. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're looking at. Drones attract the next generation. Partnerships with local community colleges and schools where we can talk about that one day you could fly a drone on the railroad might have seemed something that was so far out of reach a couple of years ago. It's a reality now. So we're using them constantly. It's a complete system. They're doing inspections, they're surveying the yards, they're helping our crews to see exactly where trains need to be, where cars need to be stacked, and we have available space because right now the industry, our number of cars and containers that we have in our yards are at an all-time high because of the pandemic. So we're seeing a lot uptick in our traffic of 25% year over year over the last 2 years because of COVID. So we need technology and tools like drones to be able to manage what we have to get resources to the American public.
So I can get my package faster. That's right. Excellent. Thank you. And Greg, what about you on the DOT side?
So the DOTs have also have taken that step into the use of droned or unmanned aerial vehicle technology, and its use is growing day by day. It's used for inspection of bridges, but it's also used to document construction practices. It's also used, we have underwater drones that can determine whether there's scour at a underwater bridge element. So drone usage is just growing exponentially in the DOT world, because as we are working smarter, the technology is there. We are bringing in younger folks who have broader ideas. And to give you an example, we had a young man who was an intern with us, and he's a junior in high school, and he's bringing ideas to us about how he can improve what we're doing by the use of a drone. He's been flying a drone more than half his life. So those are the type of things that we have to bring to the table. This is a young African-American young man who goes to high school in Portland, Oregon. So these are the smart things that we have to do in the DOT world to make sure we are being as efficient as possible.
Excellent, excellent. And we won't have time today, but we also have to have, Congressman, a policy discussion that goes along with that and some other things, because with that as well becomes the privacy concerns that we have for some segments, right? But then we also have, getting into artificial intelligence and data, and how data in terms of inequities has been used in the past for discriminatory behavior. And so again, another panel, another topic, but it's all related.
Right.
Policy perspective, Congressman, we just have to be aware of all with technology also comes hand in that hand, just ensuring that those inequities don't intentionally get created. But this is fascinating.
That's brilliant.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Boyd, you knew I was coming with you, and I teed it up perfectly because we got into technology, but also it's getting into never being too young, really to start that impact. I think if a 5-year-old can FaceTime, you swipe to the right, and when they see a message pop up and all that, they can certainly start being exposed to careers in technology and transportation. And Dr. Boyd, I would like you to take your time with this, so I don't want you to feel rushed, because I know that this is really an important topic, and you're very passionate about the discussion around STEM and development of our youth. And I'd like to start by saying that between 2017 and 2020, we made steady progress, and I'll go there with women's representation. We are underrepresented in the workforce. But a broken rung as the first step up to manager continues to hold women back. And now that the COVID-19 crisis has happened, it's threatened to really erase the gains that we've made over the last 6 years. According to a study that McKinsey and Company did, it was called Women in the Workplace. An unprecedented number of women have left the workforce to care for families. And in fact, we've got a potential to set ourselves back a generation and the loss of women and minorities in the workplace. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention, but clearly I wanted to get your thoughts on what you're seeing from an educational perspective and in our STEM careers.
Thank you, Janet. And I also want to thank Congressman Carson for this opportunity as CompTO and CVC celebrate 50 years together, as our chair has already said. I think adding to the comments that have already been referenced in terms of developing our young people, we all already know that our young people are bright, they're curious, and we have to be intentional if we want them to take our places in the future, well, even now, because we know if you're involved with children or grandchildren now, they come out of the womb ready to swipe right. They already know how to deal with devices that we're still learning how to deal with. And so we need to be intentional as we prepare programs for them. And nothing is too early. Again, it used to be the saying, well, we have to wait until middle school or high school. That's too late. We need to start as early as possible with programs and collaborations between CompTO and our organizations and all of the departments to say to our young people that if they can see it, they can be it. But that's a part of the issue. They don't see it. So we've got to provide opportunities for them to see people like you in environments where you are, so that they can say to themselves, I want a career in transportation because I've seen this and I've seen that, and I have some ideas for solutions. And if we allow them to do that through internships, through apprenticeship programs, many of our HBCUs have centers for opportunities for research. Adding transportation to that will allow more minorities and especially more women to be a part of that. But again, we have to introduce it early. The things that are sexy and on television, they see and they want to be. This isn't sexy and it may not be on television, but we need to be intentional in what we promote to them as an opportunity to have a tremendously successful career. And we can only do that by putting it in front of our young people. And we would talk about whether or not they go to college or community college or vocational school, but letting them use their skills and bring them to the table. And as you talked about the erosion of opportunities for women who are meeting the glass ceiling, and now it's become a concrete ceiling. And so we have to be deliberate in finding ways to break through. And education is our ticket to freedom. Education for this generation and those who are coming behind them will always be the tool that they need to push forward and know that they belong at the table. And as I believe Terry said earlier, if there is no table, you build a table. But first you have to know how to build the table. And so again, we need to provide every educational opportunity that we can to make sure that we expose our young people to opportunities that they aren't even thinking about right now. They see it, they ride the transit, they fly on planes, they go out on boats and all of the multimodal development, transportation, but they don't see how it all comes together. And that's our job, to bring that conversation directly to our young people, providing opportunities, as was said earlier, for the high school student to be an intern at your facility. It's not too early for them to get double credit in high school and college. Some young people are now graduating from high school with an associate's degree because they were able to do both at the same time. We don't need to put limits on these young people. They are able to do incredible things. We just need to open the door for them and let them get in and then move forward and do all the things that they can do. But we also need to stay steady as we push for initiatives for underrepresented minorities and women, for opportunities, for contracts, for grants, for everything that is available, and make sure we don't let any of it erode any further but making sure if we tie ourselves to the educational pursuits, tie ourselves to our HBCUs, our community colleges and other colleges and universities, and make sure we do start, 5 years old is not too early to start talking about how does this train work and how does it get from Washington to California, and helping them understand how to tie, bring things together, to connect the dots, and then they will be ready to take our place as our emerging leaders.
Well said. Thank you very much. Yes, well said. Thank you. And Tira, I am going to come to you, I promise, in a moment, but because of what Dr. Boyd has just said, I want to do something a little different. I want to pivot to the Congressman and stay with you, Dr. Boyd, though, right? One of the things that is really important about this whole theme of transportation and technology is accessibility. It is a difference from an education perspective, a healthcare perspective, and a food perspective. And it does leave folks behind if you can't get to that job or to that hospital. Congressman, you talked about the healthcare, the food deserts. One of the things what we've noticed, and inequities that have been spotlighted with the pandemic, even more so than we already knew, was the fact that the young people that had to be at home for school, many of them did not have internet, broadband, reared its ugly head in a way that really I hadn't anticipated in some of the volunteer work that we do. And so suddenly you have a generation of children, young people that have been impacted by having to do schoolwork from home, problems, either no internet or very low broadband, and they are very low accessibility, and they are once again finding a reason to be, let's just say, Dr. Boyd, embarrassed because they're freezing all the time and they can't get online, or a whole host of other issues. And they weren't getting that meal that some of them needed at school. So that food desert and food accessibility became also even more so spotlighted. So I guess what I'm really going is it's all interconnected and woven together in terms of this theme around equity. Just thoughts from the two of you. We're starting with you, Congressman.
The pandemic has made it painfully clear just how reliable transportation infrastructure is to our country. This pandemic laid bare the inequities we've long experienced. And, it's also opened up a very new perspective on the definition of workers who are essential and workers who are frontline. So from the bus drivers getting medical staff and grocery clerks to work, to the freight movers who get the groceries to our neighborhoods, postal service and UPS and FedEx workers who deliver our packages, from cargo flights to Sprinter vans to our doorsteps. Technology has really been a lifesaver during this pandemic, but we've also seen it falling short. We don't want our communities to fall behind or left out as so many transportation technology-related opportunities open up. I think what's important about this infrastructure bill, we talk about infrastructure, we think about rail, we think about roads and bridges, which are critically important, but broadband has to be a part of this. Not only just in urban centers, but especially rural communities where the world has gotten smaller, but we need that connectivity with children who don't have access to the internet, especially when they're unable to go to school due to a global pandemic. And so I think that the investments that we need to make going forward have to be critically done in a way that expands access to technology and involves our learning in technology to close the digital divide. And as vehicles are becoming more autonomous, this infrastructure bill is going to focus on building smart roads that communicate with these vehicles to reduce the number of fatalities that we're seeing out there. And so as our younger generation, as was noted, is far more technologically literate than many of us, I think that technological literacy, which comes almost innate and instinctively in younger people, I think the way we can hone it, everyone talks about STEM and STEAM, but I think ways in which we can make this connectivity more relatable. And that may look like just going beyond giving our children laptops at schools. That's important. But once you get home and once you're unable to go because of the Delta variant and these other variants that seem to be imminent as we face the fall and winter months, to have that connectivity means so much more than just talk and trying to connect at a McDonald's or a Starbucks, if you even have one, or maybe even a truck stop if you're in a rural community. To have that connectivity and to have it for free, I think that's the next step in terms of closing the racial and digital divide that exists.
Yes, that's right. And Dr. Boyd, just quickly, thank you, Congressman. And Dr. Boyd, my friends that are educators talk about the number of students that just stopped coming to school during the pandemic. You know, they just hadn't seen them in months. And so I raise this back to you because this is really a problem that we are all going to face in years to come about this impact in the last year and a half or so. But what are your thoughts here as well around this conversation?
Well, those are thoughts that are absolutely true and accurate. There has been statements that, you know, all of our children lost a year. And if you think that those who are in homes where they have access to everything, if they lost a year, then our children lost 10 years.
Yes.
Because again, we're talking about the inequities that were exposed during the pandemic. No, if you don't have a cell tower in your community, whether you know, rural or in the city, and you don't have a laptop and you're trying to do homework on a cell phone,
yes,
just imagine all of the problems and issues that you're having and trying to keep up. And so again, that's why it's important for organizations like COMTO and all of ours to work with our policymakers to identify those inequities and then work to promote, to close those gaps and to make sure that our young people in every community, urban, rural, wherever they are, have access to the tools they need to succeed in their generation. But it is up to us to change the policies, the laws, to make sure we open the eyes of people who sometimes don't want to see the issues that are glaring in their face about what's happening in our communities. That's when our voice becomes powerful. And we have to, again, as part of COMTO, we have a legislative advisory council, and we have people from all over the country who are bringing the issues together and then consolidating them in reports and making sure those reports get to the people who can make a difference. And I think that's what all of us are concerned about and sharing in this conversation, that it is up to us to raise the issues. It is up to us to make sure that we fight for our children. We fight for their rights. We fight for their access. We fight for their ability to be able to be all that they can be. And that means we have to give them exposure in every genre, in every case that every opportunity that they can have.
Excellent. Thank you both. Thank you both for that. And this really is a great segue, Tira, I think, to you. And thank you for waiting patiently as we've talked about education and workforce development and accessibility to get to that job when you get the job. So transportation, again, is that backbone for all of this. You are an executive with a minority contracting firm. And so as you've listened, as you've listened to this, I really want to tee up your thoughts around what your company's doing to make the most of supply chain and delivery opportunities, as well as with any challenges you're seeing, how you're overcoming them. And I know you're going to tell us a bit more about your business and the specifics around meeting materials and raw materials and construction materials. But if you would also, and take your time, Tira, because you've been so patient with this answer, you also need this workforce we're talking about. We need it now and we need it in the future. And so just give us a sense of your perspectives.
Well, thank you again for having me. Thank you to Congressman Carson and CBC and COMTO for allowing me to speak. And this has really been a very pleasurable conversation thus far. And I'll say, so as the president and CEO of Strom Contracting, we're a minority-owned, women-led welding and fabrication firm that specializes in bridge construction and bridge remediation. We are directly involved in the transportation, community. And to Dr. Boyd's, one of Dr. Boyd's point, I can say how we reach out to the community. We have partnerships. We actually impact them when they're 7. So we have partnerships with Baltimore City Public School and Johns Hopkins, and we do virtual field trips with schools around Baltimore City. And we show them other opportunities in career fields like welding and fabrication and different things that they can also have a great future for. And it's exposing our children to those opportunities. So again, we work with Baltimore City Public Schools to expose our young girls and boys to the different types of transportation related fields, again, such as welding and fabrication. We also work alongside workforce development organizations within Baltimore City to address some of those within our community, and some, as Inez had mentioned, they have a second chance program within Indigo. We also like to call ours a second chance program as well when we're working alongside a lot of the workforce development organizations. And as we always say to each of them, we cannot do anything about your past, but what we can do is help you with your future. These are really good wages. These are low barriers to entry job opportunities, as well as certification programs that 6 to 8 weeks, you can be certified. You can be a certified welder. You can be underemployed, chronically unemployed, going from, making $8, $7, $6 an hour, whatever that may be, to 22, all the way up to $33, $35 an hour. We've literally seen men and women within Strom contracting go from homelessness to home ownership within 4 years because of the increase of wages, as well as being able to take their families, to a just different area and level by the skill sets as well as the career that they decided to come into. So we're really big in Strom contracting with reaching back into the community, pulling ours. I say fortunately, unapologetically talk about, we really go into our community, the Black and Brown community, and focus in on job development, job creation, and job skills training. So we can ensure that, we're reaching back and we are helping. And if we're not going to do it, as we say, who is? And again, construction, there's plenty of construction opportunities and construction jobs out there. And again, it's the easiest way to really help to bridge those gaps.
Kira, do you find excellent? That's excellent. Congratulations to you on the meaningful work and the impact that you're making in Baltimore. Do you find that, and this was pre-COVID, I'm sure it's just been exasperated as well. Do you find that workforce in general, availability is there for your business? In other words, we have a congressman, a typically with federal funds, we have a DBE, MBE goal, Dr. Boyd, those sort of things. But in terms of workforce individuals themselves, particularly for construction jobs and construction management, that's really based on what's considered the availability in a particular population in terms of women, people of color, and those sort of things. And those numbers, interestingly enough, are a lot lower than one might think. And that is because based on that trade, the skill set may not be available. So there's a lot of work that's going around to just say, let's increase the threshold, because they are there, need to find them, but we also need to educate them. Are you seeing in India, Inez, Indianapolis, you may have some issues here with this as well, but what are you seeing in terms of just availability of a workforce that you need to give those jobs to? Are you challenged there?
We're very challenged with the available workforce. Prior to going into COVID, we were about 450,000 welders shy of what we needed in 2008. And again, as I said, these are not job careers that, there's nothing to sneeze at when you're talking about the wages. You have $27, $28, $30 an hour base, and then you also may have a fringe of $18, $20 an hour, with the total package ranging from $45 to $63 an hour in the DC, Maryland area. Obviously, if you go in the Northeast, they're much higher. So these are paying jobs, and it's unfortunately the industry, it's not, as Dr. Boyd said, it's not glamorous.
Yes.
dirty work. You have to get up early. You may be staying late. You're working in the elements a lot of times. And a lot of times it's more so about the opportunities and the awareness of these types of jobs. And then how do you get into that? So we also work alongside our local CDC, where our Community Development Corporation, where our building is located at. And so we work alongside of pulling people directly from the local community and bringing them into these types of jobs. But yes, we've been struggling for years to fill these positions.
Okay, and we could talk about this for a full day, and I'm going to hit as well, Inez, but can you tell us, I understand that you're also doing some fascinating work at Strom as it relates to solar and wind technology. Can we get you to tell us about some of that, some of those technologies and initiatives?
Yes, actually, I just got back from the International Partnering Forum for Offshore Wind, and I'm going to tell you, I was the only person of color there in a conference of 1,400 people. And it's a new industry that is coming to America. It's offshore wind farms. There are a lot of jobs, from elevator technicians to welders, fabricators, food truck operators, and actually need to be on the site. There are a lot of opportunities for businesses to either shift and or men and women, especially within our community, to get into these jobs. One of the fastest growing fields is, turbine technicians, which eventually become offshore. Now it's currently in onshore. Turbine technicians are growing at rapid speed. So these are all new industries that businesses, minority-owned businesses, can get into, as well as our population. If you are looking for a job, they're out there. There are opportunities out there for you, especially for our people.
Fascinating. How did Strom get into this particular sector?
Well, in the state of Maryland, the Maryland has a project, offshore wind project in the state of Maryland, and we knew that there was a lot of steel, and you can only do two things with steel: you can bolt it or weld it. That's it. So when we knew that there was an opportunity for us to get in, we did get in on the ground floor. So we've been really looking at this and working on this since 2014. We finally got our first opportunity in 2019, and that actually was with some port enhancements. The weight of the steel that's coming in, you have to support for our infrastructure projects. So again, a lot of opportunities during construction, and then post-construction with O&M.
Oh, well, that's excellent. Congrats. Thank you. Quick question to Inez, and then I'm going to throw a question around technology to the DOTs, the CSX gentlemen, Terry and Inez. But Inez, was sticking with availability of the workforce. I understand that bus operators, perhaps, and others are harder to get than ever. The war on talent, the struggle is real as it relates to workforce development, and the unlikely competitors, such as an Amazon, are the type of folks I understand that the public transit agencies have to compete against.
Yeah, we are struggling, just like every place across the country, to have workers. We've never seen it like this before. It is unprecedented. And, we're committed to providing services, and it's not just on the fixed route side, but our paratransit services are suffering. Other modes of transportation, because we look at ourselves as movers of people. There are reports that the taxi cab companies, they're struggling to get enough people to drive taxis, Uber, Lyft. Everybody who is moving someone is struggling. And we had a competitor who is one of the largest movers of goods here, put their sign on our lawn demonstrating that they were paying a higher rate. We were like, are you kidding me? Like, get that off my grass. So we're all competing for the same pool of bodies. So we've had to look internally ourselves, work with our union, our ATU Local 1070, to be able to look at our wages across the board. Forget what the contract says right now. Let's do what's best for the organization and for our community. And so we're having to raise our rates across the board. We're raising our rates to be more competitive. I don't know if we're there yet. We may have to raise it again. And so, we're doing the interns, we're doing everything. We've also given the second chance program to all of our vendors. So it's not just within Indigo internally, but also to our vendors. We're helping our vendors train. We're training them so they can bring more minorities to the table. It is a very collaborative and very comprehensive approach, working with our city. We're not doing this by ourselves because it is a community discussion.
Sure. Thank you for that. And this is going to be the final question before we get into some closing remarks. And I really want to check with Patrick, check with Greg and Inez around what you're talking about, not doing it by yourself. And it gets to my mobility as a service platform, and that is dealing with congestion on the roadways. I think we're finally at a time where we're talking about, and MASS does that, where we're looking at what causes congestion on a roadway. All it takes is in Atlanta, if you will recall, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, was the bridge fire, shut the city down just about until that bridge was repaired and back up and running. And those are kinds of things that happen when there's an incident on the roadway. It can have ramifications that are beyond what you would normally expect. And so when you look at congestion management strategies, you have to really look at what flows on a road. And that's everything from a port where that freight leaves the port and drives in some cities right through the heart of the city to take that freight to the airport or to go from Atlanta up to Indianapolis. It just depends on how it flows. And solutions take a look at roadways, looking at that DOTs, Greg, what's happening on your roadways, looking at freight, CSX, the fact that things, oftentimes that freight leaves the port, it leaves on a truck though, that has to get on the roadway. And all of that creates congestions. And with many folks looking at how do we get more work, which has been fascinating to me, how do we get more work in our ports so that we get more business in our state? Well, the conversation with DOTs, Greg, particularly I'll say Georgia, when I was living there, became broadened because it said, we're not going to be as attractive to the freight, to folks to bring freight through if they spend an extra day just getting to the state of Georgia because it's so congested. So we need a solution that looks at Inez getting people out of their personal vehicles and onto public transit, being able to influence traffic patterns. Perhaps trucks can go to a different time of day and those sort of things. But again, this is a much longer conversation, but I want to see if you're thinking along those lines in terms of integrating with the other modes in a way that we haven't done before to resolve our traffic problems, as well as providing mobility solutions. And I'll start with Greg.
So one of the things that we were looking at on this bridge program out here in Oregon and Washington is providing alternatives for people to get out of those single occupancy vehicle trips and giving them transit alternatives, giving them, if they want to ride a bike, giving them a facility to where they can safely cross this river and get to a destination. So all of those things, I think DOTs have long come to the conclusion they can't build their way out of congestion. But what they can do is use the right-of-way that they have a lot smarter.
Sure.
And smart technology was mentioned, whether it's vehicle technology or infrastructure technology, has to be brought to bear in some of these heavy traffic corridors to make traffic move better.
Yes. Yes, thank you. And that's the work that Terry's doing, that fascinating work. Patrick, quickly, what is CSX doing from a holistic picture of mobility?
Well, we've been faced with certain challenges like no other over the last 2 years since COVID kind of started, but our supply chain has been robust, it has been responsive, and it is moving forward. But to kind of piggyback off of what Tierra was saying and others have said, we need to hire more people in order to meet the current demand. Right now, we're trying to hire 500 people at CSX. Salary minus benefits is starting about $80,000 a year. How do we bring those folks in to kind of help get the goods across America? So some of the things that we're doing currently is that, yes, we try to find solutions where we can move it as close as we possibly can to a train to a terminal for a truck to do the last critical mile and vice versa. When you look at the 70 ports that we support in CSX territory, you're seeing a story and an evolution of solutions coming smarter from the shore inland. So for example, you look at South Carolina, you look in Georgia, you're starting to see them repurposing and rethinking how things kind of come off of a boat onto a train and ultimately get to within last critical miles of its final destination. So we're working hand in hand across the country with folks who are trying to find ways to do it. Greg, some of the things that we're doing in the Northeast, because we're primarily in the East, is we're trying to figure out the best time today to make delivery so we're not choking up the roads in the middle during rush hour. Other things you'll see states creating hot lanes or alternatives for trucks for those last critical miles. But then also too, we're working with our local community partners. For example, state of Maryland, we're going to start undertaking a Howard Street Tunnel project, which is going to allow us to go double stack, which means that the northeastern ports, New Jersey, New York, things like that will now have continuity of double stack all the way through Maryland, and vice versa too for you, Congressman, out in Indiana. We employ 900 people, and we're always saying, how can we make their lives better, quality of life and the like, by finding smart solutions to give them more time at home, but still being able to do the work they need to do to take care of their families. So we're looking at a lot of different things, but we have a lot of science behind how we support our customers and the expectations of trying to get things on time to our customers in a timely fashion.
Thank you. And I was going to Indianapolis. I was going to go to Inez, but Inez, if you want to do it quickly, but that's that first mile, last mile pivot to you, isn't it?
It really is. I think we're focused on that. We are the organization, the connector of people, and we're looking beyond our 40-foot bus right now. And we're looking at how we can just move our community. And what does that mean? Is it in a bike? Is it in a scooter? Is it on Uber? Is it in a taxi? You know, is it a small bus? And so that's what we're focused on. And I think too many times transit agencies think that all they have is the big 40 or the 60-foot bus. And we need to evolve ourselves as our cities are evolving, that we are in the business of moving, connecting people to their jobs, to healthcare, to food, you know, all of the things that we've been talking about. And that's what we're focused on. So be it through bus rapid transit, autonomous technology, you know, and using all the other mobilities that I talked about, even bike trails, we are partnering with all of our members within our community to be a part of that. We're looking to create one device technology that will connect you to all of those things so you can see what the best solution is for you to get you where you want to be.
Thank you, Inez. I'm so sorry we're out of time. What a fascinating conversation. Thank you all. So I've gotten the hook that we're out of time. So I'd like to, if it's all right with all of you, I'd like to pivot to Congressman Carson to bring closing remarks, and then I'll wrap us up, if that's okay. Congressman?
Absolutely. Thank you, Janet, for doing a remarkable job. I just want to let everyone know that this is the start of our work with the CBCF Braintrust. What a phenomenal panel. But, you know, I look forward to working with each and every one of you in the very near future. And I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your schedule for such a wonderful discussion that will impact our community tremendously. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and God bless. Janet.
Thank you very much, Congressman, for hosting this informative, vital debate. Thank you to all of our panelists. It's been a tremendous discussion. I hope, as you've mentioned, Congressman, we will continue to have this conversation and collaborate as we grapple with the concerns and issues discussed today. Let us be optimistic and positive. This is an exciting time in transportation, and we must all help lead the way and coalesce around a common goal of moving America, all America forward. Thank you all. Have a great day.